Howdy folks, it's Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician, and if you follow my YouTube channel, you'll see that the beast is back. It came back because I needed to swap out some light bulbs on it that I had to order, and a few other things and whatnot, but it also came back with another gremlin. And that's the complaint that it came back with, is that the AC, once it hit 90 plus degrees, was having a hard time keeping up, and it was blowing warm. So I went ahead and checked it. I've gone through the system now. This vehicle has two AC systems. It has one for the front and it has one for the back, which means it has two separate compressors, two separate systems, and all that other stuff. Both systems are struggling to keep up. It also came now, well, let me backtrack a minute. We've been spending some time going through the engine because it's had some pulley squeaks on it. And this time it also came back with a complaint that we think another pulley is squeaking in there. And so the complaint was that when it was started up in the morning, there's just a slight squeak in there. Now what's interesting about that is one of the common complaints associated with compressors going out on this vehicle are, whenever I start my vehicle up, I'm getting a little bit of a chirping noise. So I actually heard it this morning when I started it up, and I identified it. Now what I do when I hear little chirps or squeaks is I look at the bumper and I try to identify on the bumper where exactly that squeal is coming from, whether it's coming from here, whether it's coming from here, whether it's coming from here. If it's coming anywhere out of the grill here, then on this vehicle, I definitely know that we've got pulleys. But if I hear it coming from down here, well, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my AC compressors, because an AC compressor sits on this side and an AC compressor sits on that side. And so ultimately, that is where I've been able to identify that noise coming from. So oftentimes when you have a vehicle that's giving you AC problems, if it blows cold one day but then quits blowing cold the hotter it gets, or if you have a situation where you're using a temperature gauge and you're testing the temperature of the air that's coming out of the vents, and you notice that when you give it the gas, the air begins to come out of the vents a little bit cooler, well, that's a direct indication that your AC compressors are getting weak also. So you're going to want to look at that. So we went ahead and we put the gauges on it. We checked everything. We did notice that it was low on Freon, and one of the catches about something being low on Freon is if it's low on Freon, then more than likely it's also leaked the PAG oil out, which means the compressors aren't being properly lubricated. So I introduced ultraviolet dye into the system, and as you can see here, we have found leaks along the lines. Now where these lines crimp right here, okay, that's common for AC lines to leak there. So we definitely have leaks. It's not holding its Freon or anything like that. And then another common place, if you can see back in there, okay, right there at the expansion valve. Okay, that's another common place for it to leak. So unfortunately, this Mercedes needs a AC system. It needs it front and back as well. So it's only a matter of time before those compressors completely go out. And when that happens, that is actually something that can leave you completely on the side of the road. And as expensive as it is to fix AC systems, if you run it to the point that the compressor decides to lock up or explode or grenade itself, as I call it, more than likely you're going to cause thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of damage. You could possibly even damage the engine beyond the point of being able to be replaced. So real quick, before we go over any more of this, I want to show you an example of how an engine can be damaged by a compressor that is ignored. All right, guys, let's take a walk out here to the boneyard. It's also my parking space. So this Honda had some issues with the AC, and the compressor was flagged as being one of the issues. It had leaked its Freon and coolant out. And I'm going to show you this Honda real quick, and I'm just going to show it to you here for a second. I want to see if you can see what is actually wrong with this Honda, okay? So can you see that? Do you see how that alternator is sitting in that engine? It's been knocked completely. I'm trying to get myself out of the shadow here. It's been knocked completely off and out of whack, okay? The brackets that this alternator bolts into, one of them is completely cracked and broken. The other one is kind of bent, and it has damaged a part of the engine block. The reason why this happened is because if you look right there, you see what else is not sitting in here correctly? This AC line. That AC line connects directly to the AC compressor. So what happened was the compressor and the clutch inside of the compressor decided to come out and come apart, okay? And it hit this alternator, knocked this alternator out of whack, and destroyed everything between the AC compressor and the alternator and the engine block. So unfortunately, because of that, it has made it to where this car is no longer worth fixing. So when it comes to things like AC compressors, because AC compressors do run off of the belt, the main serpentine belt, they are part of the engine and all that other stuff, you want to be very careful ignoring these types of things, because it is something that if you ignore could completely put you on the side of the road and ultimately end up causing more damage than what you really wanted to deal with. So now on the bill of health that came with this vehicle, I did notice that it mentioned that you can hear a slight squeak coming from under the hood, but you can't hear it if you're sitting in the cabin and stuff like that. And so I'm almost certain that little slight squeak was not the pulleys that we heard, because the pulleys that we heard were loud. They were loud and it was a squeal. So, but that slight squeak, that's a direct indicator that a compressor is probably getting worn out and going out. So at least I think they were honest on that one, but what they should have put on that one was slight squeak check AC compressor. So anyways, in order to get this one back on the road, we're looking at 2 new AC compressors, and we're going to want to run lines. We're going to want to replace those lines that go to that expansion valve. And as far as the lines that go towards the back, I've double checked and triple checked those, so we're good. So 2 AC compressors, AC lines, new Freon pag oil, all that other stuff, and that'll put the beast back on the road and reliable again. So alrighty folks, well, I appreciate everybody supporting me and watching my videos. I hope you got some good information out of this. This is Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician, signing off.